How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the seventh episode of Critically Incorrect, and most importantly, the first episode of 2021. We have a really cool episode today, and today I'm joined by Charlie and Justin. If you both wanted to say hi real quick.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, so as this is the first episode of 2021, we figured we'd kind of do a look back at this year and a look forward at the same time. So, yeah, it's going to be a really cool episode talking about kind of the games we adored this year into different categories, as well as just looking ahead of what's to come in this hopefully better year. So, yeah, with that first being said, I do want to first ask for questions for next week's episode. If you have any real quick here, make sure to let us know. Hopefully, as January starts to play out, we'll have some more news stories to talk about, and this year will start to pick up its speed. But besides that, yeah, if you have any topics in particular you want asked, or answered on the question or on the podcast, just ask away. And with that being said, we haven't had an episode in 2 weeks, so I want to know what you both have been playing for the last 2 weeks, especially since it's been on a holiday. So I guess, Justin, it's been 3 weeks for you, so if you wanted to start off with what you've been playing.
Sure. Okay, so since the last, it's been, what, 3 weeks since I've been on the podcast, so I guess I should start off with the fact that I bought a Nintendo Switch Lite, so that was pretty good. And then I got a few games for that, so I've been playing Super Mario Odyssey, a bit of that. I'm pretty still really early into that game. It's just because I bought the Switch Lite mainly for gaming on the go, obviously. So I don't really use the Switch Lite whenever I'm at home because I'll just be playing on my either PC or PS5. So I basically take the Switch Lite to work or if I'm just traveling. And I've been playing some Super Mario Odyssey. I've got a few hours in that game. And also, I got Mortal Kombat 11, so I've been playing the story for that game. I am impressed how the graphics are still pretty good on a handheld, so I'm just glad to see that. The graphics are still good there. Although I do notice especially for Mortal Kombat 11, once it hops into gameplay from the cutscene, the graphics do take a hit, but it is expected. But yeah, overall, I'm enjoying the Switch Lite. It's pretty good. And then other than that, I've been playing a bit more Call of Duty with friends, which is, just the regular. It's I don't know. It's like a once a week type of thing. Just, hop on for an hour or two, get a few multiplayer matches going. They had the season 1 update or whatever. So, I've been playing some of the new game modes like Prop Hunt, which was really funny at the beginning. Basically where you just disguise as a prop and then the other team has to hunt you down. Got quite a few interesting matches there, so that's pretty good. I also got Sackboy: A Big Adventure. I was basically waiting for the online co-op to come, so once that happened, I played that with one of my friends from home, and it's been fun. I don't know, probably around 6 or 7 hours in, and around I think halfway through the game or around there. It's just been good to play the there's special co-op levels designed for Sackboy, right? So those are fun to tackle because we just got the voice chat going, and then sometimes we'll troll each other and try and throw each other off the map and stuff. But yeah, overall Sackboy's been pretty fun. And what else? A bit of Cyberpunk here and there. The game hasn't interested me a super amount. I really haven't played gotten too far into the game. Kind of putting it on hold for now, just maybe for a few more weeks. But yeah, I definitely do want to return to Cyberpunk very soon because the game I'm still excited to see where the story goes and everything. It's just that I reached this one part in the story where there's a mission where you need $15,000 or whatever to proceed in the story, and I was just and I only had 2,000. I was like, bro, fuck this, I'm not doing this right now. So yeah, I haven't played Cyberpunk in 2 weeks probably. And yeah, other than that, I gotta go with my guilty pleasure game, NHL. Yeah, that game, I don't know. I just return to that game every once in a while, just because it's, as I said, it's a guilty pleasure game of mine. It's just mindless fun for me. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing.
Right on. Sounds like a lot. That's cool. Are you playing Breath of the Wild or no?
Not yet. I'm gonna wait for that one. I want to beat the Mario Odyssey and Mortal Kombat before I do.
Gotcha. After
before Breath of
Odyssey,
the
I
Wild.
definitely recommend it.
Yeah. I bought it though, so
Oh, nice,
yeah,
nice,
I have
cool.
it. I have it. Yeah.
All right, Charlie, what have you been playing?
Um, I mean, over the Christmas break, I've played a lot. Mainly though, it has been Cyberpunk. I did one of the endings today, so I've gone through the main story and quite a few of the side missions. I haven't got that much left on the map. According to Steam, I'm like 62 hours in, so I've played it's played quite a bit. I did really enjoy it. It is just a shame how buggy it is because I have noticed way more since getting further in the story, which is a shame. But hopefully, once that's all lined out, it'll be really good. And I've actually been diving back into VR quite a bit recently. I did get and try out the Medal of Honor VR game, but I did end up refunding it just because it is not very good. So I didn't play a ton of that. And then was diving back into Boneworks because that had its big 1.6 update, which is really good. Still absolutely love that game. And then just a few multiplayer things here and there. So League of Legends I've been getting back into with a few mates. Playing that quite a bit. And a bit of Fall Guys.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's about it really. Mainly Cyberpunk.
Right on, right on. Since our last episode, I just want to quickly add here, I still have not played Ghost of Tsushima, so still representing the Act 2. Let's see. It's honestly just been mainly Cyberpunk. I'm like 50 hours in now. That's been mainly my game of interest. I'm absolutely loving that game so far. Really liking it and been down that rabbit hole. I've played a bit of Apex yesterday. I got back into that on PC since I have a friend of mine that's on console. So they added crossplay in the last few months here. So tried that out. Probably going to go back into that a bit more today as well. Trying to think of anything else. Honestly, it's mainly just been Cyberpunk. I haven't been playing too many games in general over this past break just because I have had other interests of mine I've been trying to focus more time to lately. But besides that, it's been all down into Cyberpunk, and no regrets. That game is great. So hopefully I'll be able to beat that soon enough. It is quite a long game. I'm trying to do all the side missions before I do finish up that game. Just so I don't have to do the endless amount of side quests that I normally do after an open world game, after the main story. So, yeah, been playing that. Besides that, I don't think I've been playing anything else really. I played like the first maybe 10 minutes of Black Mesa just for the tram ride. But yeah, besides that, it's all been Cyberpunk. And yeah, I guess with that out of the way, we're going to talk about our favorite games of this year. We kind of have certain categories. We might have like a loose conversation afterwards, just talking about games that, maybe didn't make one of these categories, but we still want to give recognition to this year. The first category we do have is for Best Art Direction. I guess we'll all go over kind of like our picks for Best Art Direction. So I guess, Justin, you can start with your pick for Best Art Direction.
All right. So for art direction, I decided to pick Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah. I don't know. I thought this was like, I don't know. Yeah, I thought. So basically, I guess, Ghost of Tsushima. I mean, like you can compare Ghost of Tsushima like with many of the Assassin's Creed games, right? But like, one of the settings that I've always wanted to see in Assassin's Creed was like something kind of like maybe like in Asia, like Japan, China, something like that, and we haven't really seen that before. So when Ghost of Tsushima got announced, I was like, hell yeah, this is like totally what I want. Samurai game in Japan. And I just think like, yeah, just the whole world of Tsushima, all the different environments, there's like, there's like snowy areas, and then the areas where, like, I don't know, how do I describe it? Like how there's like forests that are all like yellow, right? I guess, or like, yeah, like I just love the huge variety and different environments and all the colors and scenery. I just think like the whole art style and everything. I just love Ghost of Tsushima for that aspect. So, for art direction, I didn't really struggle too much with that pick. I thought Ghost of Tsushima was great for that.
Yeah, it's definitely up there in my list of best art direction this year for me, for sure. What about you, Charlie? What'd you pick?
I ended up going with Hades in the end. I actually haven't. It's only recently I started playing that game a few weeks back. Um, but visually, it's just so nice to look at. Just all the designs of the characters, the environments you're going in, the effects. It's such a good looking game. I mean, all their games are. Like what was the first one they did? Or not the first one, but Transistor was great. Like that visually looks amazing. So yeah, Hades is a great game overall, but yeah, it looks really good. So that won it for me.
Right on. I was like looking at, best art direction. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna pick this one just because it does stand out to me. And I had kind of like a roller coaster at first, kind of like being very skeptical about this art direction for this game, and then ended up loving it. And I put Crash 4 here. Crash 4 has a really cool art direction, in my opinion, that just stands out, especially when you compare every single Crash game up until now. Especially considering the remake was all about, kind of being furry. This one's more kind of like a toy, plasticky kind of vibe to it. Yeah, Crash 4 had a really good art style. Definitely really like that. And I honestly wouldn't mind if Crash going forward kind of carried it. Like, I kind of liked it that much where kind of gave like new life to him in a way. So yeah, I like Crash 4 a lot, so I gave it to that. And I figured you guys would talk about Final Fantasy at least, or not Final Fantasy, Ghost. Sorry. Actually, Final Fantasy was my runner-up, just because that game also looks really beautiful, and I remember going through that game just constantly in awe. So yeah, those two, but mainly Crash 4, just because it's so unique and ultimately kind of like took a already established IP and kind of gave it new life with that. So yeah, our next category is best music. I guess we'll just go around the table again. So if Justin, you wanted to start.
All right. So, unlike you guys, I haven't played any of the big heavy hitters with the great music scores like Final Fantasy and Doom Eternal or whatever. So, my choices are kind of limited, but I decided to pick one that I don't know. Like, I was looking at the Game Award nominees, for the Game Awards, and I was just like, man, the only the only game that I played there was like Last of Us 2, and I'm like, man, I don't like. I feel like that game had such a like I don't know that like the first game soundtrack was so memorable, right? And I feel like the second one just wasn't at all, like wasn't even close to that. Like I only remember like 2 or 3 tracks from that game, so I don't know, definitely not that game. In the end, I decided to pick Spider-Man Miles Morales just because I was thinking about like the games I had the most fun with this year, and I was thinking about how like I guess like video game scores and music really ties into that gameplay, right? And I just remember like when I'm playing Spider-Man Miles Morales, the combat is so fun, and the mix with the new like the new music with the hip hop beats, and it just tied in so well with like Miles' story as well, and like just the combos and everything that I would like you would do in Spider-Man, mix up with the music. It was just like I just think it's like super fun, and yeah, so I don't know. I picked Spider-Man for that.
It's a good pick, honestly. I didn't really think about that too much, so that's a good pick. Yeah, I definitely see where you're going there. That was a great soundtrack. What about you, Charlie?
I ended up going with Ghost of Tsushima. We actually talked about this when we watched Game Awards. I think me and Justin both said that it kind of like should have been at least nominated because it does have a really good score. I don't know. There's just so many tracks in that game that stick out to me, and I love so much. I actually have some of them on a playlist when I'm doing work because they're just really like relaxing, and it just fits the mood of the game so well, and just even like the ambient music in that game is so like beautiful. So yeah, that's why I went with that one.
Nice, nice. Best music, I went with Final Fantasy VII Remake. This honestly might have been the toughest category for me. Literally just because I've loved so many of the soundtracks this year. Like, honestly, I think it was a tie between this, Cyberpunk, as well as, to a certain degree, Half-Life Alyx. There's not, like, too many, soundtracks in Half-Life Alyx, but a lot of the ones that are there are super good, and worth listening to. So, it's been a good year for, gaming music for sure, but I went with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Just everywhere from the battle theme to the bombing mission theme to Hollow, so many good just scores in that game, and oh my god, dude, like just thinking about it right now, I had a blast editing my review for it because I was just going through all the music in that game, and so good, so good, especially considering, they're kind of remastered or like different versions of the PlayStation 1 original. So I went with Final Fantasy VII Remake there. We decided to go into a different category that pretty much recognizes best underrated games. A lot of times the same kind of games get nominated every year for like a lot of categories. So we had a category here for best underrated game in particular to talk about a game that isn't talked about enough in our opinion. So yeah, we're all going to give our best underrated game now that we thought 2020 gave. Justin, what was your biggest underrated game of 2020?
All right. So, I mean, I don't actually think this game was like nominated for anything. I just think, I mean, I think it was because it came out like really late in the year. So, but yeah, anyways, the game I picked was Sackboy, just because, like right now, or I think like with all the PlayStation launch titles, which was great. The PS5 had a great launch. If you look at just like comparing to the previous PlayStation consoles, I think this is like the strongest launch that we've had. We got Spider-Man, Demon Souls, which I still have to play. And Sackboy, we had Astro's Playroom was a great game that came with the PS5. So I think like all those other launch titles get talked about a lot, and Sackboy hasn't really been talked about too much. Even like if you like talk about platformers, like everyone will be talking about like Astro's Playroom, and like there hasn't been too much talk about Sackboy. I think the game is like super fun, especially if you're playing with friends, as I mentioned before, like earlier in the podcast. I just think Sackboy is like such a fun to play. Yeah, and once again, like with now that there's online co-op, it's just like I think that game's really underrated, and people definitely need to play that game.
I wonder how the conversation would have took a turn if it had online co-op day one, because I know so many people that were planning on playing that.
Yeah, definitely
Day
would've got
one
day
if it
one.
had online co-op.
Definitely would have got day one.
So I feel like that update, like sure it has it now, but people kind of moved on, or at least
Yeah, I know. I was like, because I was just looking up like some statistics for it, right? And it's like I know, a lot of the people that like played it or whatever, like they didn't like even make it to the end. I'm assuming for those are like a lot of people that just played it solo or whatever, or like at the beginning when online co-op wasn't there. So
yeah,
I
that's
don't know.
true.
It kind of sucks to see, but yeah, like if you like online co-op's out now, so like if you have the game or if you're unsure, like definitely get it. It's a lot of fun to play with friends.
I definitely think it's worth picking it up, especially considering the PS5 lineup isn't exactly that mature right now. I will say that, yeah, you're most likely right in the fact that Astro probably being free and also at launch as well probably took the Thunderlight in spotlight for that. So, yeah, that is a shame. Definitely go play Astro, or go play Sackboy rather. I need to go back and finish that a bit. But yeah, that's a good pick, honestly. What about you, Charlie?
I see. I've really struggled here. I've got two that I just can't choose between, so I'm just gonna say both. So they are Star Wars Squadrons and Black Mesa, which Brandon brought up earlier. So Star Wars Squadrons is a really, really good game, and I think flew under most people's radars purely because the kind of history behind the game didn't sound that great. Like it had been in development for like less than a year. And it was just going to be this cheap-ish EA Star Wars game that a lot of people thought would be filled with microtransactions. In reality, it's a really good flight sim Star Wars game with a pretty decent campaign that's not too short. It's also fully playable in VR, which I think is great, and it's got cross-play between VR, non-VR, and all platforms. It's a really good game. So hopefully more people will go out and buy it, especially because they've added like free stuff when they weren't planning to, because it did quite well. But I don't hear anyone talk about it. So, and then the other one, Black Mesa, is like a full-on fan remake of Half-Life 1 that has been in development for, I want to say like 10 years. I think it's like just over 10 years now. And it finally fully released this year. And it's such a faithful remake of Half-Life 1. And in a lot of ways is a lot better to play now than Half-Life 1 is. Like, it uses all the Half-Life 2 mechanics and just puts them in to the Half-Life 1 setting, and it works so well. It's a really good remake, and more people should go and play it. Plus, you can run it on like any PC ever because it's on Source Engine. So everyone should go and buy Black Mesa because it's so good.
I will also mention right now it is on sale given the Steam
Yeah.
winter sale. So if you're watching this episode within the first 3 days, go check it out. Definitely. I played Half-Life 1 early this year in preparation for Alex. So I definitely wanted to wait a bit, but I'm at a point now where I do want to revisit that game, and especially since Black Mesa is a bit different from Half-Life 1. I could already tell based on like the introduction of that, tram ride. I'm definitely going to go and play that game here soon. So yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that game. For mine, I did take an interesting direction here as well. I had to put this game just because it's so impressive and people don't talk about it enough. And it's also because the kind of game it is, it's hard to get the recognition it deserves. And that's Dreams. Dreams is essentially like a game engine really on PlayStation 4 and now PS5. Like the amount of content and different experiences you can make in that game is insane. Like anyone that hasn't picked up Dreams, I definitely do recommend it. Media Molecule, like they're in a kind of shitty situation in the fact that they essentially made a game engine, but it's hard to market it because how the hell do you market that, you know? It's really easy to pick up and learn the tools. Like it's not terribly difficult. There's a big community on Reddit and everywhere else that, people gather online. Like I'm sure you could find groups online and Discords and all that. They're really supportive. There's so many tutorials online. You can make music. You can make, movies. Really, you can make ultra realistic looking games if you, learn the tools good enough. It's just such a remarkable piece of tech that anyone can essentially create what they want. Considering what they did with Little Planet on PS3, it's kind of crazy to see how big of a jump they made going into PS4. Yeah, just the future of that game looks bright. I feel like if it does, die, that will be because of Sony. I feel like Sony isn't giving it its proper due diligence. Like if I was Sony, I honestly would have bundled it with every PS5, like kind of like Astro, where you get Dreams with it and kind of push it in that kind of direction. Yeah, obviously it's just kind of a shitty situation considering what that kind of game is, but definitely think it does deserve more eyes and attention towards that because it's been awesome. It's also in VR. Like they added a free VR update. I checked it out. It's super impressive being able to play so much, of that game's content online in VR now. So I definitely have had a lot of fun with that game, and I definitely think it deserves more attention than it has been getting this year. So don't forget about Dreams. That's all I'll say. Go check it out if you haven't played it yet. There's also a pretty cool campaign that kind of gets you introduced to the kind of experiences you can make in that game. So, yeah. Big up Dreams. Anyways, our next kind of category here is Best Game Direction. Ultimately, this is essentially recognizing games that take an interesting direction that we want to kind of admire and respect and kind of recognize. So, yeah, once again, Justin, we'll start off with you. What did you pick for Best Game Direction?
All right. So for Best Game Direction, I decided to go with The Last of Us Part 2. You guys know my opinion on The Last of Us Part 2. Now, like, it definitely wasn't, like, my favorite game or anything like that. I definitely had my issues with it. But when I think about that game, I do want to, like, respect basically the whole direction that they went into because it just, like, it wasn't anything what I was expecting, and I'm sure, like, if you didn't see the leaks prior, obviously you would have been surprised because it's just like completely nothing like the first game in terms of at least like the story like direction that it went into, and even with the trailers and everything, I know like a lot of people give like Naughty Dog flack or whatever for like the trailers were like so deceiving of like what the actual game was really, but in the end, like the whole direction with the two aspect story, basically showing off how there's always like two sides to any conflict. I really thought that was like a cool concept, and yeah, like I just thought they like there's definitely like some areas that could have improved on, like when building up this entire story or everything, Like it didn't pan out exactly like the way I wanted to, but I think like overall like I do respect that they they took such a big risk with the direction. So yeah, Last of Us Part 2.
Right on. Definitely. Can see your point there. It's kind of crazy to think about what we thought The Last of Us Part 2 was at the beginning of this year and how we think about it now.
Because I remember friend like I had a friend who like or he like saw all the leaks before. And he was just telling me, he was like, yeah, you're gonna be like so surprised. He was like telling me that the trailers are so not what the game's gonna be, and I'm like, bro, like the trailers look fine. They just look like like a good representation of like a sequel to The Last of Us or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And like that was just like completely different. I was like, oh, what the hell? Yeah.
So I guess I'll go with mine. I was not sure what to go with. I ended up changing it like last minute. So I've gone with Astro's Playroom. I know it's kind of a weird one because it's not like a full game. Obviously, it's bundled with every PS5. But I think it does so many cool and interesting things with the controller specifically that show what can be done with the tech. I also think it's just a really, really good platformer. So I do hope, and I'm almost certain that we'll get like a full-on Astro game that is probably non-VR. Just because so many people now know what Astro is and probably want more. So yeah, I hope we get more from it because it's a really good game. I think they did a great job with it. Yeah, that's about it. Really.
Astro's probably the most consistent series on PlayStation. Like each,
Yeah.
well, I mean, there's 2 games now, but like,
Playroom
well,
as
if you
well,
count
I
like that
guess.
VR, if you count the
Playroom
VR, yeah, there's also So if you count the Playroom VR where it had the like original level that kind of pitched Astro, what was it, Rescue Mission for PSVR? That was super good. That the fan reception for that kind of manifested ultimately what was Astro's Rescue Mission. And then everyone that was into PSVR loved Astro's Rescue Mission. It's essentially, people call it the Mario 64 of VR. Like, it's really good. It's honestly, if you liked Astro's Playroom at all, and you have, like, it's hard to recommend buying a PSVR headset right now because I feel like PSVR 2 is on the cusp next year, or just sometime in the next few years. But if you are in some kind of position to pick up a PSVR at all, or if you have one and you somehow don't have Rescue Mission, pick it up. Ultimately, if Astro sold the DualSense and is the best example for that, it's literally the same thing but for PSVR. So definitely recommend that. I actually almost put Astro's Astro's Playroom, or what is it? Astro's Playroom, right? Yeah. I almost put that on best underrated game, but ultimately decided not to. But I'm glad you guys are recognizing it here. So yeah, definitely can't wait for the VR sequel. And yeah, just there's so much good stuff in that game. Like, me and Charlie have been doing the time trials on that back at launch. That was a blast, and it's just so good. So for best game direction, I ultimately went with Half-Life Alyx. I wanted to recognize this game somewhere in here, and I felt like best game direction kind of represented that the best. Ultimately, I'm trying to think of like one particular thing about Half-Life Alyx that I adored, but it's just kind of the fundamentals of VR that Valve kind of not necessarily solved, but had a solution for in a way that I haven't really seen yet in VR. Obviously, VR being a very early kind of form of gaming right now, devs are still learning, and constantly one of the most annoying things that can pull you out of immersion is constantly having to walk around in your play space and like lean down, pick up something, and bumping into like other furniture in your house, right? Because you're walking around, obviously your actual real living space here, so that just tends to happen in VR currently. But with the Alyx gloves in VR, it just was the most fluid experience I had playing a VR game, and the fact that you could like literally see an object and pull it to you, and you could stand still literally if you wanted to. There's so many different things about that game that made it feel like a full-on game. Obviously, its length was, that of a normal, single-player Half-Life game, as well as just like the little things in that game. Just all add up. The story was super good. It's the best representation of VR right now that is possible. So definitely want to respect and kind of recognize Half-Life Alyx in that way. So that was definitely a no-brainer for me. So yeah, Half-Life Alyx is my pick for best game direction. And yeah, we're on to our final two categories here, best story and game of the year. So we're going to go into best story here. Best story, ultimately, obviously, is just the best narrative that we found currently in gaming this year that we want to recognize. And I guess we'll go into a different order this time, so I'll probably start with Charlie.
Okay, right. So I have a very, what I would assume is going to be controversial pick. I went with Cyberpunk 2077. I think that it is one of the best. I mean, it is the best story I've played this year. It's very simple, but it's written to a point where you care so much about the characters you meet. And I think once you start exploring like the side missions, like the stories of River Ward and Pan Am and things like that, like it's just so good. Like I got to the final mission today, and there's stuff that happens in the one that I chose that's kind of like it hits hard. And when a game is able to do that, you know they've done something right. And for me, the story is just it's really good. I need to play the other endings because I don't know how different they are. From what I can tell, they are wildly different. And so I really I'm excited for expansions at this point. I kind of just want more, because I really hope they continue the story from some of the different endings and stuff, because some of them do set up other things. So yeah. It's a weird one, but I really liked it. I think there are problems with the game, but the story is not one of them, and it's a shame that it came out the way it did, because I feel like if this had come out a year later, or 6 months later, something like that, like people would have been all over the game. So hopefully it gets more recognition in the future, because it is really good.
I have a feeling that in the next year, like, I don't think there will be like a certain time where everyone realizes how good Cyberpunk is, but I feel like a lot of people that are hating on the game now, that, for good reasons, especially if you're on console, because the game is really unplayable, especially if you're playing on PS4 and Xbox One.
Yeah.
It's getting better slowly by each patch, but I feel like a lot of people are going to come to realize that this game is really good once eventually they do play it in a better condition that the game is currently in right now. So yeah, I honestly do agree with you. The story in Cyberpunk is so good. I would say less the story, but more the characters, like you said, kind of just you care about each character there are, in like these different factions and around Night City. Night City feels so lived in, like it's kind of crazy. I think this is probably the open world game where, essentially, I feels real since Red Dead 2. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. So good pick there. Justin, what about you? Best story.
All right. Best story. Man, I just decided to go with The Last of Us 2, to be honest, because I don't know, all the other games I played this year, like, I didn't really, or like, I guess the focus for me of like enjoying all the other games I played this year wasn't because of the story, really. Like the other games I enjoyed were probably more for the gameplay. So yeah, I was just looking at all the games I played this year, and in the end I had to go with The Last of Us 2. Even though like it wasn't really the story I wanted to see, like I think like I guess my vision originally, like before the game came out, or what I expected was just so different that I ended up like not liking it that much at first. But I've definitely come around from it a bit more. I respect it a lot more now. I can see what they're trying to do. And once again, yeah, just the whole like, I think like they set out to basically like tell all these different like themes, in the story. The theme of like, how there's always like two sides to every conflict, because conflict happens everywhere, right? And there's always like two sides to every story. Like, both sides always think they're in the right. And while I don't think like I don't think, how do I say this? Like, I don't think they this like it came into fruition as best as it could have. I think like it definitely could have improved in that area. I think like the concept of it was pretty good. So yeah, best story, I went with Last of Us.
Same here. Yeah, I put best story as well as for Last of Us Part 2. ultimately, I was like looking at all the games that came out this year, and Last of Us Part Two stood out to me for obvious reasons. It's essentially the one game this year that I played through pretty quickly within like 2 days. I beat that game, less than that, and ultimately it was because I wanted to see what was going to happen with Joel and Ellie, and the continuation of one of my favorite games of all time. Really, I think it has some of the best narrative themes this year for sure. It's kind of interesting. My thoughts on this game have changed over time as the months have kind of passed by. It's funny because lately I have been playing games where revenge has been kind of like a theme, or just watched a show where revenge is kind of like a theme, right? And ultimately, I find myself like agreeing to that theme, right? When it's about stuff I don't really care too much about. Like, I'm just like, yo, if you're going out for revenge, this is stupid, right? Like, you're just gonna get yourself killed in the long run. But then when it happens, in The Last of Us Part Two with characters that like are some of my favorite characters in any media, then I'm kind of like in Ellie's shoes, right? Where I'm like, yeah, let's kill Abby, right? So I've kind of find it interesting. Like, my thoughts ultimately keep changing as time moves on, but that just speaks to the game's story ultimately, I think. So yeah, I definitely went with Last of Us Part Two as well, and to me that's like a no-brainer. So yeah. Anyways, we are on to the biggest and ultimately the ultimate, award here, best game of 2020. Ultimately, I know this doesn't need any introduction. It's our personal favorite game this year. So yeah, Charlie, I'll let you start again. What was your favorite game of 2020?
So I feel like this is gonna be, kind of everyone saw it coming, but it's Half-Life Alyx. I didn't want to give it an award in anything else because there's so many great games I played this year, but overall, it's just, to me, it's a perfect game. There's not really much else you could do to it to make it better. It's a really good story. The gameplay is fantastic. The audio design is great. Just the visuals, everything about it is just so good. And to be honest, I've started replaying it again for a third time now. I think it's probably my favorite Half-Life game. I'm not 100% certain, but like it's just got so many memorable parts, and I think overall it's the strongest story. Like, Half-Life has always had an intriguing plot, but nothing is really told throughout the games. It's all very hidden away and very secretive, and I feel like they do a much better job of having a cohesive narrative in Half-Life Alyx. And then obviously it being one of the best VR games, and it puts a lot of other games to shame. I think Half-Life Alyx and Boneworks are probably the two best VR games you can play right now. They do such a good job with the medium and how they use the controllers and the feedback you get from like picking up objects and interacting with the world. It's just such a phenomenal game. And I really hope that in the future more people get to play it as VR evolves and becomes easier to use and cheaper and all these kinds of things. So I really recommend if people have the opportunity to play the game, because it's really, really good.
Yeah, ultimately, great pick. Great pick, yeah. Not much to really say that you haven't hit on.
Yeah.
Just Half-Life Alyx is phenomenal. Go play it if you haven't played it yet. If you have the means to play it, that is, obviously. And I can imagine only over time that will just grow and grow. So, yeah, just great pick all around. Half-Life Alyx, definitely. It's kind of crazy that it was a VR game and it managed to do that. So I think that speaks wonders about that game. Yeah. Anyways, Justin, what was your game of the year?
Game of the year, my game of the year is Ghost of Tsushima. I just think that was the game I played this year that I had the most fun with. I guess if you definitely the game doesn't do anything it doesn't do anything new, because at its core it really is just like a glorified Ubisoft open world game. It has all the repetitive open world content. So apart from that, after I beat the main story, the rest was really a grind, and I definitely kind of left a sour aftertaste in my mouth, just because it was just I don't know, 20 hours of the same thing over and over again just to get the platinum trophy. But yeah, my initial experience with the story, and then obviously I would do some side content in between of this main story, and just because I don't know, I actually enjoyed doing a lot of the side content in between the game, in between the main story. You know, like just I would take down like the main towers, and then what was it like raid those I don't know what they're called, and I'm not sure what they're called. I forgot what they're called, but yeah, basically just upgrading Jin and making him you know, have more abilities and stuff like that. Yeah, I just had a super fun time with the gameplay. I remember the first time you unlock like that triple dash or whatever, like the triple attack thing. Like that was so sick.
Yeah.
I was just like at that point you had like the kunais already, so I would just be like tossing those, like pulling out the bow, and then the triple combo. Like I was like, holy shit, this is so fun. Yeah, just had a blast with Ghost of Tsushima.
All right. This one's gonna be a bit controversial. I'll explain my reasoning and thought process as I go on. I'll just say the name of the game right now. Game of the year right now is Cyberpunk 2077, which is kind of crazy because I did not expect that at all, considering I used to clown on Witcher 3, right? Honestly, like, I guess I'll speak on the genre more than anything. Open world games get really shit on, and that's because they're not done properly in a lot of ways. For me, it comes down to like rewarding the player and their time investments. A lot of games you just kind of check off check boxes. Like there are some games that do it better than others. Like I'm thinking I played a bit of Immortals Phoenix Rising. That game's been getting praised. Like that game's still good, right? It's like not as bad, but ultimately it's still the same thing. You check off things, get repetitive, and ultimately I just feel like I don't know. I'm just playing something mindless and knocking off the same kind of task just across the map, right? Cyberpunk is, as I said, just an excellent example of an open world game, especially considering since Red Dead Redemption 2, which is crazy. Like, yeah, this genre that constantly, like, you hear open world and immediately you might be like, but like Red Dead 2 and Cyberpunk are like some of my favorite games this generation. And that's because they take open world, but they make it worthwhile exploring. The characters in the game are some of the best characters I honestly think this generation has had. That's not something to say lightly, considering this generation has had a lot of good characters and stories. I haven't finished the game, and that's why I was thinking, should I put this? But I'm at a point where I played 50 hours, and I don't think even if the story ended in like a fizzle, that it would still really change anything, because my reason for it being Game of the Year doesn't rely on the characters solely. It doesn't rely on the gameplay solely or the choices that you make. It's just kind of the culmination of a lot of things. This game isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, considering the bugs as well as certain aspects of this game, like the crafting, I don't even use. Like, there definitely needed to be a bit more time on this game. But for me personally, I think this is the best game that this era has had. If you had, if you were able to play it in like a good setting, obviously. The game isn't that in a good condition right now on consoles, which is a shame. It should have been delayed, but yeah, ultimately it's kind of a surprise for me because I didn't like Witcher 3 at all, but I'm loving Cyberpunk 2077, and it's honestly might be my favorite game since Red Dead 2, which is kind of crazy. So we'll see how it plays out, but I'm loving the game so far, and it's ultimately like I'm just completely obsessed with it right now. So yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 kind of surprised me as well. And it's been weird. Like this year, I feel like a game would come out and like I'd like that game like more than the other one, like Half-Life Alyx and Last of Us, and now Cyberpunk. So yeah, it's been a good year. It's been a good year for sure. And yeah, anything else you guys wanted to add, or any game that you want to recognize that might have not fit in any of these categories that was like a highlight for you at all?
I mean, I will say I was contemplating putting Cyberpunk as my game of the year. It was close. Like I didn't think it would be, but as I was playing it, I was like, "This is really good." I think if it wasn't as buggy and as unfinished as it is, then it probably would have been, and it would have just pipped Half-Life. But because of the state it released in, I couldn't do it. Which is a real shame, because that is like the only thing letting it down. Like everything else about it is really good.
Yeah, exactly.
I just feel bad for the devs, because they clearly worked their asses off for it, and
it's crazy.
It's sad to see that all their hard work kind of released in the state it did, especially on console. But yeah.
That's a shame that like you guys have like this whole podcast, you guys have been saying how amazing the game is, except for the bugs, right? And I just think like in the long run, what will the game be remembered for? You
Yeah.
know, that's like a big question. You know, obviously like the devs are working really hard right now to, you know, like improve the experience, like trying to iron out the bugs, which is gonna take some time because like this game really just like it shouldn't have released in this state, like especially for the last gen consoles. And then like I know that like you know the bugs even still happen for like the higher up hardware, which really sucks. But yeah,
In terms of what it gets remembered for, I feel like CD Projekt Red definitely will, you know, kind of save it in a way. Like, I think if it's going to be a very different story by next year. But the thing is, our generation doesn't really care. Like, our generation is one to find something, meme it, and then just keep memeing on it. Like, this and Last of Us Part 2, it doesn't matter what kind of quality this game is, right? They're just going to meme on it because they will. Like, that's just kind of what our generation kind of is at the moment in terms of it. So, yeah, people will just be like, haha, announced in 2012, game is still a mess. XD. That's essentially what it's been up to.
Random glitch videos or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So, it doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately, I don't really care about validification. I play things I like, and ultimately, the more you kind of realize that and less, you know, stray away from needing, you know, awards or other people's opinions to validate your own, the more healthier I'm sure you'll find the internet to be. So, yeah, definitely. Will be interesting to see next year how this game is remembered. There are going to be like free DLC. I know they have like a website where they're saying like that free expansion coming or a free DLC starting spring.
Yeah, so they're meant to be doing like a load of free DLC like they did for Witcher, like early this year. And then they've already said that they are going to do like full paid expansions as well that like expand the story and choices and that kind of thing. But I would imagine that stuff has probably been delayed a little bit to make sure that the game is fully polished before they start announcing new content, because I feel like that would just create even more uproar. But when that content does come, I'll be there day one. So
same. I actually wouldn't mind seeing what Cyberpunk Online could look like. Like, it needs a lot of work, especially considering the single player game is broken right now for a lot of people. But yeah, it definitely has potential. I've been like seeing kind of interesting ways they could do that. So that'll be interesting to see ultimately what CD Projekt Red like the next few years look for them. So yeah. Anyways, it being the first, you know, week of 2021, we're entering a new year full of new game releases. We figured we'd also look ahead at what's coming out. So we all picked 3 games essentially that we're looking forward to the most this year. No particular order. We're just naming 3 games that we like. We'll just go one around, you know, per round. So I guess Justin, we'll start off like pick one game that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, just to reiterate what you just said before, like I didn't want to just pick, you know, I didn't just want to pick like the big AAA game that everyone's looking forward to, or else like I would have just been like God of War #1, you know. So I decided to go outside the box a bit, pick some games that like, you know, are a little under the radar maybe. So for the first game, I decided to go with It Takes Two from Hazelight Studios. You know, this game, like, it was showed at the Game Awards recently, so we got a new, you know, kind of like more insight about like what the gameplay was going to be. And yeah, once again, it's another co-op experience from Joseph Fares. And yeah, like the story and the art style like doesn't look as exciting for me as A Way Out, because like, you know, A Way Out, like that storytelling was like right up my alley, you know. But yeah, once again, this is looking to be like another great co-op experience with a friend where you're gonna have to communicate and yeah, basically like work together to complete all these objectives, you know. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to that game, and it's already coming out in like 2 months, you know. So yeah, really soon.
That still amazes me. Like they're gonna go gold like next month. Isn't that insane considering how early it feels like A Way Out just came out? That's insane. Charlie, what about you?
So yeah, again, I also tried to go with some that people might not have, like be thinking about. So my first pick is Gotham Knights, which is the new game from the guys who did Batman Arkham Origins, and it's kind of like a reboot of the Batman universe. It's set in its own timeline with all different characters and a new art style and stuff. Overall, I think it looks great. I'm very excited about the story, especially Court of Owls, and that Scott Snyder's involved because I'm a big fan of his run of the comics. And also, it's not like it kind of at first looked like it might be live service, which thankfully it's not. It's a single player and co-op game just for 2 players, so that gives me a little bit more hope that it is going to be a more traditional kind of open world game. But it just looks really good, and I'm excited to see it. I'm hoping it's coming out earlier in the year, but they just said 2021 from what I remember, so who knows when it's coming out, but I can't wait to play it either way. So
nice, both good, really good picks. For my first one, I decided to go with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. I've been a pretty big Ratchet fan since I was a kid. Really like it a lot, and ultimately, it's not just because it's Ratchet. It's also like one of the first big PS5 games that's actually like a new and exclusive PS5 game. Just everything we've seen so far looks really good. Looking forward to playing it. I feel like it's gonna be a really good game. It's kind of crazy considering we just literally got Spider-Man from Insomniac that they're coming out with yet another game here in the first half of, I presume 2021 here, since it said it's a launch title or a launch window title. I fully expect that game to come out probably like April, May seems right up its alley. So Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, I figured I'd go with that one, give it some recognition, especially since it's like really close. I feel like that's also helping it for me, but yeah, I went with that. What about you, Justin? Second pick?
Second pick. All right, I decided to go with Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah. So I've been like, I guess I would not like a super massive fan of Harry Potter growing up, but like a pretty big fan. Yeah, I read all the books, watched the movies, so yeah, I definitely like my Harry Potter. The game is obviously, set like way before the movies. It's set in like late 1800s, it said, I think.
I think something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so like, yeah, it does take place before, so you won't be meeting like Harry Potter or anything like that. But yeah, it's just like, we only saw that brief, like 2-minute trailer. We haven't really seen like any proper gameplay yet, but I'm just excited to, make my own character and attend Hogwarts. Do some, some cool spells and stuff. Play some Quidditch, maybe, Yeah, it's looking like pretty cool. And, once again, like, RPGs aren't my, biggest... I don't love RPGs or anything like that, but, I don't know. I'm excited about this one. It looks like a cool universe to be put into. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Forgot about that game, honestly.
Yeah, same.
I don't, like... It looks rough a bit from the trailer we saw. Like, it looks a bit rough, and I was quite surprised that it said 2021, but we'll see. I'm sure, like, they've definitely... Or, like, that might have been, like, alpha footage or whatever. I don't know.
I'm guessing that's going to come out in the fall, and Gotham Knights might come out in, like, summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's been in development a while, because I remember that leaked trailer from, like, January, like, 2018? Like,
yeah,
that was a while
ago.
Back. Yeah. And it didn't look... I actually went back and I watched that trailer. I was like, this footage doesn't look that different from when it did, like, 2 years ago. So what was going on at that time, But maybe that was super early on, and it was, like, a test footage or whatever for, getting funding and things. So who knows?
That's true. It was leaked, like, years ago.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I guess I'll go with my next one, which is The Lord of the Rings Gollum. Which is a game that we haven't heard too much about. It was announced, I want to say, beginning of 2020 or like late 2019. It's meant to be like a more narrative-driven, like third-person single-player game where you're playing as Gollum in between the events of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And it's also more set in the book universe rather than the films, which I'm really interested in because not much has been done with the book universe in a long time. So I'm really interested to see what they do with it, especially because it is less of an action-focused Lord of the Rings game, and we don't get much of that anymore. So I'm really excited to see more of what they're doing with it. Hopefully we see more soon, because I think we've only had like one real trailer and like a teaser before that, so we haven't really gotten a good look at it yet. But yeah.
Nice. Let's see. I'll pick here Resident Evil 8 Village. It's also kind of helping that this game is, I presume, coming out soon here. It's not going to be the normal time window where it's like early, January, February, like I thought initially. But I still think this game probably comes out before June, I hope. I don't know. I just don't see Resident Evil coming out in the fall, but I could be wrong. Village is an interesting one, coming from the fact that it's kind of like a spin-off of Seven's story in a way. Like, not a spin-off, it's canon, I think, but it's a very weird take on Resident Evil, considering werewolves and all that. For me, honestly, it's weird, because obviously I haven't played Resident Evil 7. I just haven't really cared, because that game's location doesn't really appeal to me. It just looks like Paranormal Activity shit, as well as it's first person. Even though Resident Evil 8 will be first person, it was kind of like jarring for me. But I think the thing that does it for me is the fact that we're kind of going back to semi-Resident Evil 4 locations, at least vibes that are similar to that. So, honestly, so far what we looked at Resident Evil 8, it kind of looks like 4, but in a more winter setting. Like, the village, honestly, looks really similar to what we had in Resi 4, but, as I said, in, like, a winter kind of style. I think they even had the merchant, what are you buying? That guy that's so infamous. Was at the very end of the last trailer we got, so that really interests me as well. So they're bringing back him. Yeah, I just really can't wait to play that game, especially considering I didn't really care. It's weird for me because like Resident Evil 3 I still haven't even played because I played the demo. That one just looks really action focused for me, and that's kind of like a turn off. But Resident Evil 8 looks like a return to form of what I've loved of both Resi 2 remake and Resi 4. So yeah, that's my second pick. I'm looking forward to that game. Guess we'll go back to Justin for your third and final pick.
All right, third pick. Yeah, I'll go with this one. All right, so for my third one, I decided to go with Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake. Yeah, I think like this was a game that I always wanted to, or like the Prince of Persia games were always a series I wanted to get into, never really could. And yeah, I'm just excited to play this one coming out in like 2 months now. I think it was supposed to come out this month, but got delayed until March, which is good because when the game first got announced, man, like I know a lot of people were hating on the graphics.
Yeah, it looked pretty rough.
It just like looked like a PS3 game or whatever. They're like, yeah, we need a remake of this game, which was pretty funny to see. But I mean, yeah, I'm still looking forward to it just because it looks like, I don't know, it looks right up my alley, like third person. It looks like an interesting story. And the gameplay does look quite fun. So, yeah, Prince of Persia remake. I hope, like, with the extra development time, like 2 months. I mean, I'm not expecting, like, the graphics are going to be out of, like, amazing or anything.
They're not going to change that much.
Yeah, they're not going to change that. But I just hope, yeah. I'm just looking for, solid third-person, story-driven experience.
Yeah, I loved Sands of Time as a kid, so I think you'll love that game. I don't remember too much about it, because that was, like, one of my... I think it was before I played it before the PS3 came out, so I must have been like 6 or something. But I love that game. Watching my dad play and then me playing a bit of it, it's like some of my fondest memories as a kid. So yeah, I forgot about that game as well, to be honest. But I'm definitely gonna pick that up. It's a good pick. What about you, Charlie?
So my final pick doesn't have a name. It is Project 4 from Stress Level Zero, which are the guys who made Boneworks. It was meant to be coming out last year. It was announced end of 2019, so just before Boneworks came out. It was announced for the Oculus Quest and a few other platforms, and was meant to come out last year, but due to COVID and things, it got delayed. They recently said that they're going to be talking about future projects, so this one and some other games and things, like soon. It looks, from the screenshot they showed, it looked pretty cool. It's meant to be a continuation of both kind of the world of Boneworks, as well as using all the physics-based interactions and that kind of thing that they made for that game. And this is meant to be, because Boneworks was never originally a game, it was just the engine that this game would be the first one from. So this is going to be way more story-driven. And they've done a lot for the Boneworks updates, which they've said are going to be things they use in the next game. So a lot better AI. They also added a vehicle recently in the new update, so expect to see cool vehicles and stuff in the new game. So hopefully we see some of it soon, and it should be this year because it was meant to be last year. So, but I'm very excited to see what those guys do because they're some of the most interesting developers out there. So yeah.
Cool. My third one might be surprising to some, but not surprising to others. It's a Nintendo Switch game, Shin Megami Tensei 5. Man, it's been a while. This game was announced literally with Mario Odyssey at that same kind of Japan event for the Switch. So it's been like 4 years since then. There's just so much about this game that has potential. We haven't really even seen too much of it. We've only had like 2 to 3 cinematic trailers really, but the last one was pretty good in terms of showing us a bit more, especially in terms of designs and all that. From what we've known, it's going to be kind of like Nocturne in terms of a more cinematic, atmospheric title, but at the same time having gameplay components that are more of like the recent Shin Megami Tensei titles like 4 and 4 Apocalypse. So yeah, I just can't wait. It's the first HD Shin Megami Tensei game because literally the last one was like the series is mainly like a 3DS series. Obviously, those consoles or handhelds being sub 720p. So it'll be nice to see, you know, this game fully in HD, which is kind of weird to think that we're in 2021 and this is the first time we're seeing an HD title in the series. Yeah, we're also getting a remaster of Nocturne. It's already out for Japan, but we're going to get a localized version in the West here sometime in spring 2021. It's going to be a great year for SMT. I hope the, you know, series get some recognition considering Persona has been blowing up in the past few years. So hopefully some of that will make its way to SMT as well. We'll see. It's a very different series that's more focused on gameplay rather than dialogue. Definitely do recommend it, but I'd wait for the Nocturne remaster. So we're going to get the Nocturne remaster, but then we're going to get the full new mainline title here, which I can't wait for. So, yeah, that's a no-brainer for me. Looking forward to that. And, yeah, can't wait. It's going to make me boot up my Switch again. I haven't booted up it since, like, Animal Crossing, so can't wait. I guess after all these picks, it's also important to note that a lot of times 2020 or, like, you know, not 2020, but, like, any year of games isn't fully realized until, you know, the year progresses more. So games like God of War most likely will be delayed, so I didn't pick it for that reason. Same thing with Elden Ring is because From Software tends to release games in the spring, so I feel like Elden Ring might be spring 2022. They could come out this fall, but just like they've never released really a game in the fall in the past. So yeah, I kind of at least my approach was picking games that have concrete release years for 2021. But yeah, obviously games will be announced for 2021 as well. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Breath of the Wild 2 comes out in the fall this year, or some big other game like Odyssey 2 from Nintendo. Who knows? But yeah, exciting year. Anything else you guys wanted to add before we end off this podcast?
I was gonna say, so I tried to say stuff that wasn't out soon. So games like Deathloop, I am really looking forward to, but that's like May's time, so it's not too far off. Hitman 3 is in like 3 weeks, and I'm really looking forward to that game. So yeah, some of the stuff that's out like recent or like soon as things I didn't like pick, but I am very excited for. So
yeah, I almost picked Deathloop, but I chose Resi 8 instead of that one. But I'm still looking forward to the game a lot as well. But yeah, I guess that has been it for this podcast, episode 7 here. Once again, I do want to remind you to ask questions if you have any topics you want us to talk about. We'll consider it as well. And yeah, besides that, that has been episode 7 of Critically Incorrect. We'll see you next week. I know this episode was a bit later in the week, but we're mainly going to be hitting Saturday going forward here. Yeah, thanks for the support. You know, it's been doing a lot better than I thought when we'd start up this channel again. So it's been cool to see at least that you guys are enjoying it. So that's always nice to see. Feedback, of course, also would be recommended. But besides that, that has been me, Charlie, and Justin once again. And yeah, we'll see you next week on the next episode of Critically Incorrect. Take care.
see you later.
See ya.